Ever feel like you're doing everything right in your career? Working hard, being a team player, trying to be authentic, but you still hit an invisible wall. What if, maybe, much of what we're told about success and leadership about getting ahead, what if it's just plain wrong? Today, we're embarking on a deep dive into the often unspoken realities of power. We're drawing from some eye-opening excerpts from Jeffrey Pfeffer's book, 7 Rules of Power. Our mission here is really to equip you with a new lens, a different way to view organizational dynamics and your own path forward. Understanding what truly drives influence, what shapes careers, even if it challenges some assumptions you might have.
Yeah, and what's fascinating here is how Pfeffer, one CEO described him as the most honest teacher I've ever had.
Right.
He isn't afraid to just, say it like it is. So this deep dive, it's definitely going to challenge some conventional wisdom. It might show you how to avoid certain career setbacks, and it provides these empirically backed strategies for navigating the, let's face it, complexities of power no matter what field you're in. We're not really here to preach values, right? We're trying to uncover the tactics that actually work and understand why they seem to be effective.
Okay, right. Let's unpack this first idea then. Many of us, I think, automatically assume power is about control, maybe even greed. But you mentioned a venture capitalist, Laura Chow. She found Pfeffer taught her something crucial.
Exactly. She said power is not about control or greed. It is about effectiveness. It's fundamentally about achieving the change you want to see, whether that's in your job, your organization, maybe even something bigger.
So if power isn't inherently negative, if it's about effectiveness, what really stops people from, embracing it or even just acknowledging it?
That's a really good question, because a lot of people, their first reaction is to reject these principles. They might look for examples of successful people who supposedly never engaged in what they see as power politics. Pfeffer actually talks about a former student. This student deliberately avoided these dynamics in a company he co-founded.
And how did that work out?
Not well. He ended up getting thrown out by his own partners later on. His denial, this avoidance, it came with a really significant cost, personally and professionally. It just illustrates that these realities, they're kind of pervasive, and it forces us to confront this uncomfortable truth, political skill.
Which you defined
as the ability to effectively understand others at work and to use that knowledge to influence others. That skill, Pfeffer argues, based on research, is one of the most powerful predictors of success.
Yeah.
It affects pretty much everything: your compensation, your career advancement, even your job satisfaction.
Okay, so if this political skill is so critical, why does it feel so, wrong? Maybe manipulative? Why do so many of us shy away from it?
Yeah, that's a common feeling. And it often comes down to our own internal barriers, things we tell ourselves. For instance, how many people automatically focus on their perceived weaknesses?
Right, like that example you mentioned, Christine in Silicon Valley.
Exactly. She came to Pfeffer fixated on being the youngest person in the room, having the least seniority. That was her narrative. And he challenged her. He said, okay, but what about your prestigious MBA? What about your analytical skills? What about the huge economic impact your project is having? The point is, you get to choose the adjectives that define you, the ones that empower you, because how you think about yourself, that profoundly influences what you project outwards and definitely how others see you.
That makes a lot of sense. It feeds right into that whole imposter syndrome thing, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It ties directly into it. Imposter syndrome, studies suggest it affects up to 2/3 of people, and it leads to these self-defeating behaviors like being reluctant to pitch your own ideas or downplaying your contributions. One way Pfeffer suggests countering it is just to recognize that, hey, many high-level people are actually no more qualified than you are. Or sometimes you just have to force yourself to present, to sell your ideas. With practice, you gain comfort, you build the skill, and projecting confidence gets easier.
And building on that, what about this whole push for authenticity? We hear it everywhere. Just be your true self. But Pfeffer argues this can actually hold you back.
Yeah, it's a really interesting point. Adam Grant apparently noted nobody wants to see your true self, which sounds harsh, but
Yeah, a bit blunt.
A bit blunt, right. And Herminia Ibarra calls it the authenticity paradox. This idea that acting strictly genuine according to your current self-perception can leave you stuck, especially when new roles or situations demand new behaviors, new ways of interacting.
So being vulnerable isn't always the best strategy.
Well, the research seems to show that vulnerability, especially coming from higher status individuals in task-focused settings, can actually decrease your influence and how much people like you. People often look for strength and competence in leaders, not necessarily raw vulnerability in those moments. The core insight here, maybe, is to be truthful to others' needs, not just rigidly attached to one idea of your authentic self.
Okay, truthful to others' needs. What does that look like in practice?
It means understanding that leaders need allies, they need supporters. Think about Lyndon Johnson, apparently. He spent his whole life studying his colleagues, figuring out their wants and needs so he could persuade them effectively. Or Willie Brown, the politician from California. Came from a poor background, Black politician. He strategically raised money for fellow Democrats specifically to earn their support later on. So your task, if you want influence, is to understand what others need from you, what role they need you to play, rather than just focusing on expressing whatever you feel is your authentic self in that moment.
So it's about adapting your approach based on the situation and the people involved.
Exactly. And sometimes that means prioritizing competence over warmth, initially.
Wait, competence over warmth. We usually think being likable is key.
We do, but research actually shows a negative correlation sometimes between perceived warmth and perceived competence. Social psychologist Robert Cialdini advises leaders to first demonstrate competence. Then if you show warmth later, it's seen as like an unexpected bonus from a powerful person, not misinterpreted as weakness or a lack of seriousness. Rakaya Adams, the COO we mentioned earlier, she noted, for women, that hubris part of it is really hard. I have to coach myself up to hubris. Sometimes you have to consciously project that competence first.
Okay, so let's say we're working on these internal barriers, the self-perception, the authenticity trap, maybe focusing on competence first. What are the next steps? What are some concrete actions Pfeffer highlights for actually building influence?
Well, one of the rules that really jumps out because it's so counterintuitive is about breaking the rules.
Breaking rules. That sounds risky.
It can be, but Pfeffer emphasizes that breaking rules does a few things. It's unexpected, so it catches people off guard. And importantly, rules often exist to favor those who already have power. They maintain the status quo. There's even research on this. Ivan Oregwintoft studied wars and found that underdogs, the ones with fewer resources, they actually win disproportionately, something like 63.6% of the time when they don't play by the conventional rules of warfare set by the stronger power.
Wow, 63%. That's significant. How does that translate into, say, an office environment or building a career? Not suggesting we start office wars.
No, definitely not. But think about that YouTube employee, Christina Tretino. Pfeffer uses her as an example. She apparently crashed an exclusive Sundance Film Festival dinner, just showed up uninvited with a +1, and she strategically delayed her RSVP to sort of signal importance, like she was weighing multiple options.
Okay, that's pretty bold.
It is. And later, she initiated this big cross-MBA charity fundraiser, the MBA Battle Royale, completely without permission from the school administration. She just started doing it. It ended up raising $56,000, and maybe more importantly for her, built her brand as someone who gets stuff done, someone who takes initiative, who doesn't wait for the green light.
So she created momentum and made it happen.
Exactly. And in a similar, maybe less dramatic vein, Pfeffer stresses, just ask for things. Don't be afraid to ask. People are often really reluctant, mostly because they fear rejection, right? But studies consistently show we vastly overestimate how often we'll actually get rejected when we ask for something. Think about Reginald Lewis, apparently. He got into Harvard Law School without even formally applying. He just went and pitched his case directly to an advisor.
Without applying. That's amazing.
Yeah, it is. Or Keith Ferrazzi, the networking author, he apparently secured an annual dinner with the head of a consulting firm as a condition of his employment before he even started. He just asked for it.
So the lesson is, what's the worst that can happen? You get a no, but you weren't getting it anyway if you didn't ask.
Precisely. You often have less to lose than you think by just asking.
Okay, so breaking rules sometimes, not being afraid to ask, these are actions. But you also mentioned presentation earlier. How you appear is critical too.
Absolutely critical. Rule 3 is appear powerful, because first impressions matter profoundly. There's research showing that really short, silent video clips of teachers, just their appearance and nonverbal behavior, correlate highly with the actual end-of-semester student evaluations of their confidence and dominance.
Silent clips. So it's not even what they're saying.
Not in those studies, no. It was purely visual. And Dana Carney's research backs this up. She found specific nonverbal cues signal power, things like an open body posture, speaking a bit louder, taking up more speaking time, even successfully interrupting others. These signal power. And interestingly, these signals seem to be pretty universal across gender and culture. So these subtle nonverbal things really impact how you're perceived, often before you've even proven your competence.
And this extends to how you speak too, right? Not just the nonverbals.
Yes. Powerful speech, according to the research Pfeffer cites, tends to use shorter sentences. often uses mostly one-syllable words. It avoids hedging, saying sort of, kind of, maybe. It makes clear declarations and often repeats key ideas for emphasis. It's about projecting certainty and directness.
Can you give an example of that kind of speech?
Well, Pfeffer mentions a video analysis of Donald Trump answering a question on Jimmy Kimmel's show. Apparently, 78% of the words he used were one-syllable words. The analysis put the reading level at about 4th grade, and he used a lot of repetition. Now, the point here isn't about political agreement or disagreement or even intelligence. It's about the impact of that communication style. It's direct, it's easily understood, and the repetition makes the points memorable for a very broad audience.
Okay, so project power non-verbally, speak powerfully.
Yeah.
We've talked about defying norms, presenting yourself. But how do you build a lasting impression? How do you make sure you're the person people think of for opportunities?
Right. That brings us to rule 4. Build a powerful brand. It's about actively shaping how you're known. Remember Laura Chow, the VC? She deliberately built her brand. She launched a podcast called Woven. She blogged regularly. She hosted panels, published a newsletter, taking stocks. She used all these activities strategically to associate herself with high-status people in her field and just become, top of mind when people were thinking about deals or needed expertise. It creates this kind of flywheel effect, Credibility leads to connections, which leads to more opportunities, which builds more credibility.
And a key part of that brand is controlling your own story, your narrative.
Precisely. You have to craft your narrative. Think about Tristan Walker, the founder of Walker & Company Brands. He used his personal story, being a Black man who suffered from razor bumps, to create this really compelling, authentic narrative for his personal grooming company. That story attracted investors, it attracted media attention. The lesson, Pfeffer says, is crucial for you. Tell your story before someone else tells it for you, or tells a less flattering version of it. Jeffrey Sonnenfeld's public fight with Emory University years ago really showed how critical it is to get your side of the story out there early and often. Because initial impressions, they're incredibly hard to change once they're set. You really need to control that message from the start.
It even extends to how you look, doesn't it? Developing a signature look.
It can, yes. Laura Chow, the VC again, she mentioned intentionally wearing high heels and dressing stylishly. As a tall Asian woman, she used it to make herself distinctive, to challenge stereotypes in her field. Or think about Willie Brown again, the former San Francisco mayor. He was known for wearing these incredibly expensive Brioni suits. It was a deliberate signal conveying resources, success, differentiating himself.
So it's about being visible, being known, being distinctive.
Yes, consistently putting yourself out there. Jason Calacanis with his This Week in Startups podcast, reaching 400,000 people. His book, Angel, his big launch conferences, that's relentless brand building. Or Sadiq Jalani, leveraging his role at Lufthansa to become a World Economic Forum, young global leader, teach at Stanford, give a TED Talk, use one platform to get to the next.
And crucially, taking credit for your work.
Yeah.
That seems like something people, maybe especially women, struggle with.
It definitely comes up. Deborah Liu, former VP at Facebook, now CEO of Ancestry.com, she talked about initially thinking her good work would just speak for itself. Classic mistake, right? After some coaching, she learned to actively tell people what she was doing. She'd say, "We're going to solve mobile monetization," for this project she was leading, even when it was relatively small initially. By creating that narrative, she attracted help, attention, and recognition. It's not bragging. Pfeffer suggests reframing it as helping your manager understand the impact you have. You have to make your contributions visible.
Which leads naturally into networking, doesn't it? Rule 5.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Network relentlessly. Omid Kordestani, who was Google employee number 11, apparently initially disliked what he called organizational politicking. He just wanted to do his job. But when he was at Netscape earlier, he realized he had to radically change how he spent his time. He started actively building relationships, focusing on networking, and that's actually how he got discovered by Google's founders. Or Ross Walker, who built a network by organizing social events, working for free sometimes, even befriending nightclub owners just to have spaces for events. It's about intentional effort.
But networking often feels transactional,
Yeah.
even a bit, dirty.
That's a really common feeling. Most people know networking is important, but they don't do enough of it because, exactly as you said, they find it unenjoyable or even dirty. They feel like they're just using people. But here's the interesting part. Research shows that people who already have higher levels of power are much less likely to feel that way about networking. They see it as a necessary tool.
So how do you network effectively, maybe without feeling so icky about it?
Well, Pfeffer highlights a few things. Focus on your weak ties. Those casual acquaintances often have more novel information than your close friends. Try to become a broker, someone who connects different people or groups who don't know each other. That position gives you unique access and influence. Seek central positions in communication networks within your organization, like Zia Yusuf did at SAP, making himself indispensable. And be intentional with your time. John Levy's influencers dinners are a fascinating example. He created unique networking opportunities by fostering genuine connection and curiosity before anyone revealed their status or profession, making it about the interaction first.
Okay, so we've covered getting out of your own way, breaking rules, building your brand, networking. Now, let's say you started to gain some influence, some power. How do you actually use it? What's Rule 6?
Rule 6 is use your power once you have it. And specifically, use it quickly. Think about Lyndon Johnson again. The moment he became president after JFK's assassination on Air Force One flying back to D.C., he reportedly declared, "Now that I've got the power, I aim to use it." And right then and there, within hours, he started sketching out the Great Society programs and the Civil Rights Act. He understood that new leaders have this limited honeymoon period. Before opposition starts to organize and push back, you have to act decisively.
And that applies in the business world too, not just politics.
Oh, absolutely. Amir Dan Rubin, when he came in as the outsider CEO at Stanford Hospital, he moved fast. He implemented a whole set of changes very quickly. And patient satisfaction jumped from the 5th percentile way up into the 40s in a relatively short time. Rudy Crew, when he was NYC Schools chancellor, he also moved forcefully early on, while people were perhaps underestimating him or still figuring him out.
And part of using power quickly involves staffing, making sure you have the right team.
Yes, that's crucial. You need to bring in your supporters and often move out the opponents or those who aren't aligned with the new direction. Leaders like Gary Loveman when he took over Haraz, which became Caesars, or Amir Dan Rubin again at Stanford Healthcare, they didn't just tinker. They replaced significant portions of the existing management teams with people they knew had the right skills and, importantly, were aligned with their vision. It often happens within the first year or two.
Moving people out sounds difficult.
It can be, but sometimes it's necessary for change, and there are strategic ways to do it. Willie Brown, when he was Speaker of the California Assembly, apparently used the redistricting process to create new congressional seats honorable ways, as Pfeffer puts it, for some of his internal rivals to leave the state legislature for Washington, D.C. Sometimes it's less subtle. Frances Conley, the Stanford neurosurgeon who famously spoke out about sexism, found the dean was trying to strategically outplace her by giving negative recommendations behind her back. She had to leverage public attention to counter that and actually gain more power for change.
So sometimes you have to signal toughness, make it clear you're willing to use your power.
Definitely. Robert Moses, the master builder of New York, is a classic, if controversial, example. He had that famous line, "Those who can build, those who can't criticize." And he wasn't just talk. At one point, he literally had a ferry slip bulldozed just to assert his authority over a rival agency. It created this formidable image. People knew he was tough, maybe even abrasive, but they also knew he got things done, which attracted support despite his methods.
And leaders also establish structures to keep their power, right?
Yes, that's another key tactic. Founders often set up things like dual-class voting structures for their companies. Think Google, Facebook specifically, to entrench their control even after going public. Steve Jobs did something similar after he returned to Apple. Another strategy is to consciously avoid grooming obvious successors, making yourself indispensable. Jack Valenti apparently did this for 38 years as head of the Motion Picture Association of America.
Okay, this brings us to the last rule, Rule 7. And this one sounds maybe the most challenging. Power excuses almost everything.
It is perhaps the most uncomfortable one, yes. But Pfeffer argues it's a crucial reality to understand. The core idea is that people really, really want to associate with winners. And because of that, success and power often shield individuals from the consequences of actions that might derail someone less powerful.
That feels unfair. But you're saying the evidence supports it. Can you give some examples that really drive this home?
Well, think about Martha Stewart. After her prison sentence for insider trading, her brand didn't just survive. By many measures, it actually grew stronger. Her company went public after she got out. Or consider Jeffrey Epstein. Even after his first conviction for sex offenses, he continued to socialize and associate with incredibly powerful figures. Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, Bill Gates were all reported to have met with him. Elizabeth Holmes, despite the massive fraud at Theranos in her criminal trial, was reportedly still able to raise money in some powerful Silicon Valley circles even while awaiting sentencing. Parker Conrad, ousted from Zenefits for compliance issues, quickly raised hundreds of millions for his next company. Mike Cagney, pushed out from SoFi over workplace culture issues, also raised huge amounts for his new venture very quickly. The pattern is noticeable. Success seems to create a protective halo.
Why? Why does this happen? Is it just that people admire rule breakers or they don't care about the misdeeds?
It's likely more complex than that. Pfeffer talks about motivated cognition. Basically, people tend to steer their thinking towards desired conclusions. It's psychologically easier to believe that people who are successful, rich, and powerful must also be competent, maybe even moral, because it fits a just worldview. And then there's this concept called moral decoupling.
Moral decoupling, what's that?
It's where observers acknowledge that someone did something wrong, but they mentally separate that wrongdoing from the person's performance or abilities. They argue the misdeed is irrelevant to the skill. The classic example often cited is Tiger Woods. People might condemn his extramarital affairs, but argue it has absolutely nothing to do with his skill as a golfer. This allows people to continue supporting or admiring the successful individual while still condemning the bad behavior itself. It resolves the cognitive dissonance.
So the powerful attract support and opportunities almost regardless of their past actions because people want to be associated with success.
Precisely. It creates a feedback loop. As the old saying goes, success has many parents, but failure is an orphan. Remember Laura Esserman, the UCSF breast cancer surgeon? Pfeffer mentions that when she gained national prominence and influence, a former colleague who had previously been quite critical of her style sent her this glowing email proclaiming, "You rock." Perceptions just change dramatically when someone achieves success and visibly wields power. The powerful attract more allies, more friends, more opportunities. And conversely, losing power often means a sudden dramatic reduction in that social capital. People just disappear.
And the ultimate power, Pfeffer seems to argue, is maybe the power to shape your own story after the fact.
Indeed. That connects back to controlling the narrative. Powerful people often get to rewrite their own histories, glossing over or completely omitting past misdeeds or failures. Lee Iacocca's famous autobiography, for example, apparently made no mention of his significant role in the Ford Pinto safety scandal. Jack Dorsey, one of Twitter's co-founders, quite aggressively reinvented his own story over time to position himself as the sole inventor, leveraging his eventual success and CEO status to make that narrative stick. As Pfeffer bluntly puts it, power gets to write history.
Wow. Okay. We've definitely taken a hard look at the realities of power here. And a lot of these insights, they're inconvenient, aren't they? They're often really counterintuitive. But the truth seems to be, as Pfeffer puts it, power is a strong motivational force. It's essential if you want to get things done and change lives, organizations, and the world. It's not about it being inherently good or bad, but understanding the mechanics.
Right. And it forces us, I think, to acknowledge that the world isn't always fair. And maybe more importantly, expecting it to be fair or acting as if it should be fair can actually be a significant professional disadvantage.
So, wrapping this up, what does this all mean for you, the listener? These principles of power, they're clearly not always easy or, frankly, natural to implement. But maybe that's precisely the advantage. If everyone could easily do these things, if it felt comfortable for everyone, then no one would really gain an edge, would they? Your task then, it seems, is to learn these rules, to practice them, to adapt them to your situation, not just observe them passively. So maybe the final thought to leave you with is this. As you look at your own career, your own influence, are you playing by rules that truly serve you and your goals? Or are you perhaps playing by rules that mostly serve the status quo, just because they're the ones you've been taught to believe are right? Something to think about.